What I love is these guys with 3 letters after their name saying,
well, the best thing you can do is set up an S corporation, an S corporation, I say, and that's how you pay your kids tax-free.
yes, I know you can do that, but that's not the way to do it.
The other thing that I always see tons and tons and tons and tons of posts about is that I could, well, my daughter is grown now, but I could have paid my kiddo tax-free while she was a kiddo. And I'm kind of like thinking, I wonder how that's going to exactly work, because she would have had to have some kind of job, right? Like, yeah. And so, how does that
my son's 30 now. He's about to turn 31. And I when we do chats, and some of you haven't been with us long, we have rules of the chats. We have, if you understand, like I'll say, do you understand what I'm saying? And then you would put a 1 in the chat, just so I know you're all not zombies. So if you understand, if you're with me so far, put a 1 in the chat. And then if you're having your mind blown, like, wow, amazing, you put an exclamation point in the chat. If you're confused, like, oh, I don't understand, put a 0 in the chat and then what you're confused about. And then if you're mad, you put an 8. I love my haters, but I really love my haters. That means you're mad. That means you're present. Oh, I don't see any 1s. Everybody's a zombie. Okay, it's just you and I, Sterling, today.
Oh, good.
Yeah, the zombies. My brains. No, just you and I. So I put 8 in the chat box of the pay your kids tax-free conversation because I got a 30-year-old and not 1 year did I ever pay him W-2. And I've always had some kind of company structure. Since I was 20, I shouldn't say always, but 20 on. So I'm like, God, how much money could I have saved?
Yeah, I know. I'm in the same boat. I think the summer my daughter was going to go to high school, she worked for me all that summer, and I just paid her cash. And then, we used it to buy all of her like back to school fabulous clothes, like, something spectacular. So,
like I know how much money my dad paid my brother and I on allowance.
Oh.
Like he could have written it off. This is back in the 70s and the 80s. I mean, I know like $5 a week ain't much, but hey, man, that's $60 a year and $80.
What if kids get allowance anymore?
I don't know.
That's an interesting question. I don't know how that works nowadays. So
seriously,
Did you do stuff for your allowance? I had to do things for my allowance. It wasn't like free money. Like,
that's not allowance then.
No, that's allowance. You work.
No, that allowance is we give you some things. And then you go buy candy or whatever kids do. Like I saved mine up. What you're talking about, my parents did to me too. That's not allowance. That's
the good stewardship of financial whatever.
All right. Very well then. So that's the difference. Well, you grew up in the city and I grew up in the country. So maybe there's a difference.
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
Yeah, there was hunting dogs to feed. There was stuff to haul out of a car shop. There was oil wells to check. Like Texas is a full contact sport when you're a kid. There was no sitting around after supper and just playing video games and eating candy. There's a lot of things to do. There's gardens and chickens and so many things. So but city boys, what did you city boys do after supper? You just watch TV?
Well, I'll tell you what.
What'd you do after supper?
No, Mom watched Magnum PI. No. No. So no, I did a lot of piano practice. And then by the time I was 10, I had a TRS-80 MC10 computer.
Wow.
It had 5K of memory. 5K, not megabytes, kilobytes, man. And it had a little membrane keyboard, but by God, I learned how to program in BASIC. And I could make little games, and that's what I did. I was a super nerd. Yeah.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
That's actually been very beneficial for business. So
that's right.
But I would say that there's the other good benefit of being a Texan is, we have a saying of no one ever drowned in sweat. So we're definitely hardworking, right? And find solutions no matter what the problem is. So there's no problems. There's just something I hadn't figured out yet. So
what are we talking about? Oh, tax-free kids. That's what we're talking about.
How would we have done that if we had done it correctly back then?
Right. What I love is these guys with 3 letters after their name saying,
Well, the best thing you can do is set up an S corporation, I say, and that's how you pay your kids tax-free.
yes, I know you can do that, but that's not the way to do it. Why? In an S corporation, and right now I'm working on a course to teach everybody what's good and bad about S corporations, and we'll probably do a podcast on it too. S corporations, you're not a member. You're not a manager. You're not a shareholder. You're not a director. You're an employee owner. Now, yes, you're a shareholder technically, but you're an employee owner. Employee owners must get paid a wage. Reasonable, by the way. We're not going to get into that. It's a whole other conversation. So if you dump your kids into an S corporation, guess what? They're going to have to get paid with a W-2 and unemployment insurance and FUTA and all that other junk. There's FICA involved. So would they potentially be avoiding federal and state? Yes. And I'll show you how to do that. But you're still going to have to crank 15.3% towards them. Plus, why do it? Not worth it. Instead, like the Augusta rule is not quite the same. It's really clearly in the code. There is no part of the Internal Revenue Code that says you can pay your kids tax-free. That's not there. Sorry. Anybody who says it's right there in the code. No, it's nowhere in the code. I'm sorry. However, thankfully, there's a maxim in law that says, well, if A is in law and B is in law, and C, the thing you want to do, doesn't contradict A and B or anything else, you can do C. So if A's clear, B's clear, and you want to do C, which kind of is something else, but doesn't contradict A and B or anything else, you can do it. Now, some of you know what that is, and you put it in the chat if you know what that's called, the legal term for that. The Internal Revenue Code, the whole code is that way, which was what makes it so amazing. Some of y'all, I hate tax. Well, me too. We're not really supposed to have it as American citizens. We didn't have it until recently, but they've written it in a voluntary manner so that it is quite flexible. And this is one of those things. So do we know that's in the code? If you don't make enough money to be as much as your standard deduction, 2025, that's $15,000, you don't file taxes. You don't owe tax. Cold, hard code. In fact, if you do, you could be subject to the frivolous filing penalty, the 6702, $5,000. Gross. Don't do it. Another B would be if you have a partnership, not an S Corp or a C Corp, although you could sort of do this in the C Corp, but not an S Corp for sure. If you have a partnership that your parents own and your children are 17 years or less, or 22 years and less if they're a full-time employee, if they're a full-time student, then you can pay them as employees at any amount at all. It's not just $15,000. Any amount will do. And no W-2, no FICA, no insurance, none of that stuff. Okay, so that's A and B. You everybody with me? So what we can do is, and we do this all the time in Executive Money Strategists, this is kind of our business, is we say, all right, so therefore, if I have kids that I pay and I'm parents in a partnership, LLC, that pay them less than their standard deduction or up to $15,000 each, does that mean that the kids don't file that, thus making it tax-free to them, and I in the business get to pay them as an employee, but don't have to file FICA or any of that nonsense or W-2s and get to write it off? The answer is yes.
Oh.
But those are your parameters. That's it. You start deviating into other areas, it gets very, very dicey. Now, the question really is not, can you do this? Because of course you can. So easy. The real question is, all right, what would I do? Thank you, Sherry. What would I do with this money? Because these, for the most part, these are minors. And I don't mean like down in the coal mine. I mean like they're young kids. So yes, you could set up a custodial bank account for them and all that other stuff. But here's a mind-blowing thing that one of our members said. Could I pay my kid and then borrow the money from them and put it into like a family. I'm making this up. I'm not an insurance salesman, so don't think I'm trying to sell you insurance. I'm not. IUL, whole life policy. Could I set that up so that I'm putting money into that account from kid 1, kid 2, kid 3? It's tax free. I get to write it off. And now only post-tax dollars go into IUL. Not no more. It's tax-free money going into an IUL or a whole life. And then after it matures and I continue to build this, can't I pull that money out and then use it for business or use it for kids stuff? And then when maybe and then the interest rates maybe between us and the kids 5%, which is less than what the IUL's paying. Couldn't you then, worst case scenario, pay them back with interest when they're 21 or when they go off to college or when they get married? This huge lump sum. If they're 21 years old and you're paying them $15,000 a year, it goes up every year, by the way. What's the math on that? It's at least $400,000, $500,000. What a wedding gift. What a college gift. Maybe don't do it in college, but wedding gift. Or maybe you say, listen, I'm going to set you up with this life insurance policy. And now aren't you building the building blocks of the waterfall method that John D. Rockefeller has been coined with? And you're doing it outside of your business. Meanwhile, your business is still doing its profit and you're building generational wealth over here. Yeah. Guys, it's right there. And it's right there if we get a little creative. Is this illegal? No. But we can. And this is the power of what we love to talk about. We're let's stack. Stacks over tax, y'all.
I love it. This is great, especially given how the cost of housing nowadays. Like, I would have really loved if I had done that for my daughter because, she's being a Texan. She is off living on her own little small farm and homesteading. And I really wish that I had been able to do something for her that was different because she doesn't really need a lot of money where she lives. And that would have made a massive difference in just her quality of life and what she's able to do with her garden and animals and all those kind of things. Like, a little bit would have gone a really long way.